Until the 1960s, Aboriginal people were subject to some harsh and racist government policies. This is a history which many Australians know very little about, and some will even deny the truth of that history. I'm talking today to two very respected elders about their experiences of that history and growing up in Western Australia. Auntie Mingli McGlade is a Bibliman Yorga, an elder, a passionate rights campaigner and also an activist. She grew up in the great southern region of Western Australia. We're also joined by Elder Uncle Ben Quilmara Taylor. He also has a long history of community service and activism. And he's a member of the Order of Australia and was until recently the co-chair of the Deaths in Custody Watch Committee. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for joining us on Noongar Danju today. Uncle Ben, I thought maybe, would you mind starting off by giving us a welcome in Noongar?
Yes. Kaya waju, najabal Noongar bojo bananga. Kala mor kura nyenin, war kulin. Najawaga mea jenin, derble yergin, kan kanjal wangaj, wajbal dema bamaj, barangaj Noongar, court najabal.
I love hearing you talk in language. That's so beautiful. Yeah. Now, you've both done so much over so many years. The introduction barely does it justice. I was wondering if you might be able to start off this interview by just giving us a little bit of an insight into some of the highlights from your point of view of some of your achievements and the things, the recognition that you've had over the years. Mingli, would you mind telling us a little bit about your story?
It's a long story because I'm old, but I think one of the important things in life were how I grew up when being looked after by grandmother, who was very gentle with me. I got very spoiled, and the schooling that I had, I went to school every day and had to trudge through the ice sometimes. I never thought to have a day off. It wasn't at all thought about. My father wasn't formally educated, and neither was my uncle. They were the two men who were around us quite a bit. And my uncle taught me to do the ABCs in dirt, you know, when we were camping around different jobs. We followed Dad around. And then I suppose the highlight came, well, first of all, Dad wouldn't let me come away because he thought that I would be taken and never come back, like, you know, the other side of the world, which I wasn't. So I wasn't. He was very threatening to people who tried to. And but I had a beautiful, caring principal, Stan Hughes. That's why I say it takes one teacher sometimes to be with, you know, take one child, an interest in that child. And he took an interest in me. I did very well at school, even though I didn't come from a normal home, and there wasn't very many Aboriginal people there. The rest of my family were on the reserve, but we had to live in camps. And I actually used to get a bit jealous of them because we had to cart our water and do our washing in the creek a couple of k's away, miles in those days, I suppose. And we didn't have any running water, so water had to be delivered. My grandmother made the dam water clear with putting Epsom salts on the top of it, and it would go white and the mud would go to the bottom. So, and then we got tank water sometimes, but no, it was always dam water. It wasn't, obviously it was tap water from the school sometimes. So, you know, education was the important thing at the time, and I still believe it is, but we have to be educated both ways now, and that's some of the things I've been striving for and worrying, you know, concerned myself about kids in schools. And things are very difficult and very different. They were different when I was working in the schools a little bit. I didn't work for a long time. I still was working in education, and I liked that because we had contact with families. That's now changed. You know, people have to, it's all self-service just about. So things are getting more difficult, I believe, for even though we had the restrictions, we just accepted them a bit. We didn't really realise what they were. And we didn't have such a bad relationship in the way that we saw it with my dad working on the farms, because we would always get meat, sheep, and Dad would get taken for holidays, and I don't know whether the pay was right, but I started work after school when I was 12 years old, cleaning to white women's houses, and they were just very nice. But I know it's not very nice in many places, so it's... but we did have restrictions where I come from too, and we didn't mind it because when we went to the picture show, we had to sit one side. We'd go in and on the left-hand side, and
Do you think it was just because you didn't know any better?
we
you
didn't know any
different?
better, that's
Yeah.
right. And, you know, even now, like I've lived 22 years in my street and I've only got one friend in the street. And he's a couple of houses up and he does anything for us. And he has, you know, so I think that people are not that friendly in the city. I mean, I've got my relatives around, but basically I don't know whether they're too scared to be friends and say hello and just hello. I don't want to have a cup of tea with them, but
Yeah.
I can with the other person.
Just the acknowledgement.
Yeah, I think so. And
Uncle Ben, where did you grow up? What's your experience growing up?
Well, I was born in 1939, baptised by Catholic Spaniards, and things were hard. My father couldn't get work. He worked hard, but, you know, there was no unemployment money, dole, or pension for Aboriginal people. And Dad never stole a thing in his life, but he got his citizen rights, dog license, and he got his brother a bottle of wine because we were sharing people. And my uncle went back and run amok. And they come and got Dad, and he got 3 months hard labour. When he came out of jail, he threw the citizen rights back to the Native Protection Board. You told me to live like a white man. I'll never, he said. I'm always a black man. So, you know, I grew up with these things Dad told me around the campfire. Dad was born in 1902. He told me about Pinjarra Massacre and everything. You know, in 1907 he came down here. At the Perth railway station was a big swamp. Yeah, and before me is this book. It's the way that was my home. It's all about the camps we lived in around the metropolitan area. Me and my older brother, he's younger than me, he's 74, and we took Denise Cook to where we used to live. It was all that industrial around Bayswater. I said, this was our camp here, fighting against leeches, rats and everything, walking miles. Then we moved to Fremantle. Dad was working on the water supply. No way would they give him a house. Him and the other Noah men who worked hard. They said, you darkies stop in the camps. And we had to cart water from the cemetery, midnight go down there. Fremantle, when we launched this book, there was some old white women who got up and said, as young girls, I remember that. And they were told not to say nothing.
What sort of
One
restrictions?
cried at the meeting. One of them cried, said, so I was so shocked. And when I saw this, she said, I must go to that meeting. And I went to this old lady's place for dinner, and her husband, and he not long died. And he was nice, I went to his funeral. But we were, you know, whether you were half caste, quarter caste, or full blood, you were branded a nigger by the A.O. Neville Chief Protector. And that's the way we had to be. Servants, work hard.
What did that branding mean? What did it mean to be classed as a nigger, subhuman, not Australian?
I dwongerbert.
you can't hear you.
I dwongerbert, I'm a bit deaf.
What did it mean? Tell us about some of the restrictions that were imposed on you and your family at that time.
Out of town at 6 o'clock. Dad couldn't tell the time. He couldn't read and write, but he knew where the sun was in the summer. And in the winter, he knew what bird going to shout. And he'd say to my dear old mum, Mingli met my dear old mother, Queen, her name was Queenie. Get going, it's nearly 6 o'clock. We're going to get to the horse and cart. You know, these were the things, the apartheid system that we had over us. And to show a permit when we went to town. When I went to South Africa just before 9/11 with the late Clary Isaacs, Joan Winch, Joan's still going, and a few more, Dallas Phillips. We sat down with Winnie, the late Winnie Mandela, Bishop Tutu, and I even told Thabo Mbeki, who was the president at the time. And Bishop Tutu said, "You're right, brother," he shook hands with me. "The apartheid laws came out here to South Africa. It came from your country." And you know, they still deny it here. They still it never happened. It did. We're living proof. You know, we had to steal to survive. We went to jail for stealing. Sheep, chooks. Nobody had food in the camps. We shared our last bit of damper and kangaroo meat and turtle and gilgies and everything, you know.
You both have spent decades campaigning for Aboriginal rights and fighting for the rights. What was the turning point? Where did that call come from to become activists?
1972, I'd been living in Sydney for a while because I took off from native welfare and different things because, you know, not allowed to go here, not allowed to do that when I was still at school. But I did work for a couple of years after school. I worked in Harriscraft and Sandovers, and then I did 1 year of mental health nursing, and it was Claremont Mental Hospital then. I got photos to prove that, because even though people say, "Oh yeah," but then I went over east and got to know a few people, but mainly Europeans. You know, European people were very, very friendly, and I didn't really see many Aboriginals around Redfern very much. When I lived in Surrey Hills, so that's the next suburb. But I worked my way across anyway. But then came back. I used to come back every year, except 1 year when I had a son, and in 1963, yes, and all single women had their children taken. And that was pretty scary and frightening, and I was lonely. But I came back, and then I even took my grandmother drove over to get her and drove back, and she stayed in Sydney for 18 months, and you know, we kept coming back. But it's 1972, when the embassy was open in Canberra, we had the same thing up here. There was, well, most of them have died now. Clary Isaacs, Jack Davis, Robert Brofo. Who else, Ben? Who else?
Len Colbong, yeah.
Lenny
Colbong, yeah.
Oh, and Ken, of course. Ken.
Colbong, yeah.
And Philippa Cook's not dead, Minnie Van Leeuwen, all those friends who are still, the ones who are still alive, we, you know, keep in contact. And that was the beginning. The men performed a ceremony and dug a hole. We can't see that. Women don't watch lots of things that men do. Believe it or not, you men, we don't watch you all the time. But because women have got their own things to do too. And that was when we started. And so that was the beginning of my activism anyway. And even though I went to college and got a degree, and then later I was more interested in social justice issues, really. Of course, interested in education, which is the tool, a big tool that Aboriginal people, we have to have. That's the tool, because then we get to know what white fellas are doing. But we also need our own education, and that's the thing, that to retain our identity and our culture, we've got to know where we come from, know country, learn lots of things. There's so many things to learn, we could never learn them all in time, even if you're young. So that's the interest, and all the history books and different things that are coming out now. Fantastic.
Uncle Ben, you're nearly 80, and you're still at the front of all the protests. What keeps you going?
It's the spirit of my ancestors who suffered and died. I'm going to fight for them, you know, for change. And, you know, mainly, as I said, we carried coffins up to Parliament House, placed them on the steps beside all those premiers, you know, who's gone. Some died, Ernie Bridge died, And, you know, Carmen and Lawrence, we howled them all down at the end of the land rights flag because, you know, they had the life we had. They wouldn't be standing here today. I was born in a camp in wet ground. My niece, sister's daughter, cried when she saw the old files where Dad had to get permission to marry my mother, Chief Protector, in 1919. She said, didn't they think that they loved each other?
If there's one thing you hope can be your legacy or one dream that you have that you can change, what would it be?
Oh, there can't be one.
Not one?
There's many more. I mean, truth-telling, treaty. I'm not sure about the Constitution because I meant to ask today if we become, if they accept us under that. I don't know how because referendums don't work. We would become. Do we become one of them, or can we have a treaty? We need a big treaty. Then different clans or groups can make up their own rules. And we really don't. We're sovereign people. We didn't give up. We didn't give up. That's what keeps my fight going on. That we didn't give up. We didn't give them anything. They called us. They called our people savages and illiterates and didn't know anything. They had no idea of what the structure of Aboriginal culture and history was. It was amazing. Nowadays we're getting a bit closer with environmental people because they know how our people, they're learning how our people looked after country, how they moved on and didn't make a big mess and destroy the area they were in. They moved with the seasons, you know, we got seasons. But everybody's on a learning curve, but we definitely have to get to truth-telling. Thank you.
And what do you think, Uncle Ben? Do you agree?
Terra nullius, it's a lie. You know, we were here 60,000 years, and yet they massacred all over Australia. And I heard Ernie Dingo say to an Aboriginal elder in Tasmania, he said they had a black line and they shot Aboriginal people, and Ernie said, and they reckoned it was terra nullius. Who were they shooting? Animals. You know?
Well, we were protected under the flora and fauna.
You know, in '86, we spoke to Pope John Paul II in Alice Springs. 25,000 Aboriginal came to meet him, and he said powerful words about how this land was taken from us, dispossessed, how we've lost our children, our land and dignity, culture, spirituality. And we knew that there was we didn't believe in a pagan god. We knew what the real thing was before Captain Cook arrival. And, you know, the Catholic Church hasn't put that in. They haven't educated white children, say where we come from.
So you want truth-telling as well? You want truth-telling as well? Tell the truth.
Tell the truth, yes, definitely.
Thank you both for keeping that fire burning and for all the work that you've done. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing a bit of your journey and your story today.
Thank you. Thank you very
Michelle.
much. There's a few more things that we need to.
Yeah.
We need to be looking at.
Is there anything else?
Oh, well, I think one of the highlights of it with Australia, White Australia, is in 1988, and now the 150th one's coming up.
Yeah.
Hannah McGlade, and my daughter, and I went to Sydney and saw that, and we couldn't believe it. It's fantastic. So, you know, would it be that fantastic today? I'm not sure. Things are changing, and people, the right wing has come out a bit lately. I mean, they've had rallies alongside of us, and the police have to watch them, not us. So, and just get more people educated and learn about culture and the drugs and alcohols are the demons. That's
If you don't have the history, you don't have the context.
that's right. Yeah. Thank you.
We want that Constitution enshrined, isn't it?
I don't.
That's not going to happen.
No, I want ours. We want ours. I want a treaty.
Uluru. Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, or his Minister, Ken Wyatt, never turned up. That shows you, you know. And as my old dad said, when he see that flag, he look at that. It's taken away the land, dispossessed us, took away our culture, spirituality, and gave them the rights to do what they want. Martial law in this country. What happened? They're still killing our people.
Well, they are, and we want more justice for Aboriginal women particularly, and men of course too, but the men can look after that. How they're actually being murdered. And the fact is the people who are left behind often get compensation, but the ones who have committed these crimes should be in jail and they're not. And that's another, we need justice for these, and justice for women and children. And the men can go and get their right places like as well, but it's not my area.
Yeah, but I'd just like to say, Michelle, you're doing a good job with your team, bringing us out here and speaking the truth. I hope the people understand that we're speaking from the heart, and we want to get our young people out of all this hopelessness, drugs, alcohol, racism, get them into employment, hospitality. And you know, the jails are full of my people, never ending. I've been out to the prison. Mingli cried when we went out to the prison. See all these young men, strong, standing there. They got nothing to go to when they get out.
I know you feel like you've been saying these things for a very, very long time, but we do appreciate you continuing the fight and continuing to share your story. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.